Very quickly, we figured out he's dead, and it turned into a bit of this is a crime scene to some degree. CSI crime scene wildlife.
Something in the wetlands of Florida is hunting one of the most feared predators on Earth, and scientists only discovered it after a tracking signal led them to something deeply unsettling. Because the invasive Burmese python, a snake powerful enough to crush deer, alligators, and almost anything in its path, was suddenly disappearing. Not escaping, not moving, just gone. The mystery started during a routine wildlife tracking operation inside Picayune Strand State Forest. Researchers from the Conservancy of Southwest Florida had placed a radio transmitter inside a massive female python measuring more than 13 feet long. The plan was simple: follow the signal, locate the nest, and remove the eggs before hundreds more invasive snakes spread through the ecosystem. But then, the signal froze. For nearly a week, the transmitter stayed in the exact same spot, deep in swamp water where visibility is almost zero. When wildlife biologist Ian Bartoszek finally pushed through the dark water to reach the coordinates, the situation immediately felt wrong. The python had vanished. There were no scales, no blood, no signs of a fight. Only the transmitter remained active, sending its signal from inside another animal. Some creature had swallowed the entire python whole, including the tracking device, and it was still moving through the swamp. So researchers set up cameras to find the predator responsible. And when the footage was finally reviewed, even veteran biologists were stunned, because the animal caught on camera was not supposed to be capable of killing a python like that. The signals that stopped moving. To understand why this discovery was so shocking, you first need to understand what Dr. Bartoszek's team was actually trying to do. It's May 2021, Southwest Florida. The team has been running a carefully designed tracking study in Picayune Strand State Forest, a massive flooded wilderness area on the edge of the Everglades, dense, dark. The kind of place where the water is always moving and the ground is never quite solid. Here's the setup. They surgically implanted tiny radio transmitters inside juvenile Burmese pythons. Each transmitter sends out a GPS signal every few seconds, letting the team remotely track exactly where each snake is, how far it's traveling, when it's active, when it's resting, when it's hunting. Standard field research. The kind of study that generates spreadsheets, not headlines. Then Python 19 goes quiet. 3 weeks of clean data, consistent movement through the wetlands, normal resting patterns, hunting activity, and then one morning, complete stillness. Not resting still, dead still. The kind of stillness that makes your stomach drop when you've been watching a signal move every day for weeks. The team pushes out into the swamp to investigate. Knee-deep water, tangled roots grabbing at their ankles, chest-high sore grass slicing against their arms. They fight through it all to reach the coordinates. And when they get there, nothing. No snake, no body, no blood, no drag marks, no shed skin. Not a single piece of evidence that a 13-foot, 50-pound snake had ever been in that spot. Just a quiet, steady beeping, coming from inside something else. Something alive, something nearby. The team just stood there. Nobody knew what to say. Then, in October, same year, it happens again. 2 more signals go flat. 2 more pythons vanish in exactly the same way. Same pattern, same silence, same impossible disappearance. Something in Picayune Strand State Forest was systematically hunting these invasive giants and consuming them without a trace. 3 confirmed pythons gone. Same method every time. Back at the lab, Dr. Bartoszek runs X-rays on the recovered transmitters. He stands in front of the imaging screen and stares at a python's spine, curled and compressed, sitting inside another predator's stomach. The tracking device is still blinking steadily from inside the animal's digestive system. He would later describe that moment as the most surreal experience of his 20-year career in Florida wildlife research. Whatever had done this didn't just kill the python. It swallowed it, transmitter and all, without even pausing. And now they had to figure out what in the world it was. How bad is Florida's python problem? Before we get to the reveal, and we will get there, I promise, you need to understand the scale of the problem these pythons created. Because without that context, you can't fully appreciate why finding any natural predator willing to hunt them is such a massive deal. Burmese pythons are not from Florida. They're not even close to being from Florida. They evolved in the dense, humid jungles of Southeast Asia, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia. Prehistoric-looking animals, ancient design, built for one thing, eating. So how did they end up in the Florida Everglades? The exotic pet trade. Through the 1980s and 90s, you could legally walk into a pet store in America and buy a baby Burmese python. They were sold at reptile expos, through breeders, online. Thousands of them came into American homes every single year. Cute little things, maybe 2 feet long when you buy them. The problem? They grow, fast, a lot. Within a few years, that cute little pet snake is 15 feet long and 150 pounds. It's eating rabbits, it's eyeing the family dog. The owners panic. And instead of finding a responsible solution, many of them made the worst possible choice. They drove to the Everglades and released the snake. Just opened the car door and drove away. Thousands of pythons dumped into one of America's most sensitive and irreplaceable ecosystems. Then Hurricane Andrew hit in 1992 and destroyed several commercial python breeding facilities, releasing hundreds more directly into the wild in a single day. The invasion stopped being a slow drip and became a flood. Here is the thing that makes this uniquely catastrophic. These pythons arrived with absolutely zero natural predators. Nothing in the Everglades had ever evolved alongside them. Nothing had learned to fear them. Nothing had developed any strategy to hunt or avoid them. They were the ultimate invasive species, perfect killing machines, dropped into a paradise of unsuspecting prey. The damage happened fast, and it was brutal. Raccoon populations in the affected areas collapsed by 99.3%. Not declined, collapsed, nearly gone. Opossum populations fell by 98.9%. Bobcats dropped 87.5%. Marsh rabbits, foxes, and cottontail rabbits were practically erased from the landscape entirely. And these weren't gradual changes over centuries. This happened in decades, in some areas, in years. Adult white-tailed deer, gone, swallowed whole. Full-grown American alligators, consumed in a single meal. Scientists pulled the remains of 58 different bird species from python stomachs, 58 species, including migratory birds that fly thousands of miles from Canada just to spend the winter in Florida. Dr. Frank Mazzotti, a wildlife ecologist at the University of Florida, who has spent more than 2 decades tracking this invasion, estimates there are tens of thousands of pythons currently hiding in those swamps, possibly hundreds of thousands. An invisible army moving silently through the water and vegetation, dismantling the Everglades from the inside. And for years, for a long, painful time, every expert who studied this problem reached the same conclusion. Nothing could stop it. The pythons had effectively won. The Everglades, as it once existed, was being lost forever. And then the signals started going flat, eliminating the suspects. Okay, so something is eating these pythons. Something is hunting them, killing them cleanly, and swallowing them whole, leaving absolutely no trace behind. Time to figure out what. Dr. Bartoszek's team started working through every logical candidate in the Everglades ecosystem, one by one. First suspect, giant alligator. Seems obvious, right? Alligators are massive, powerful, and they share the same wetland habitat as the pythons. They've been known to attack snakes before, but the evidence doesn't match. When an alligator kills something, it is not a clean process. Alligators crush their prey with enormous jaw pressure, then death roll, spinning violently in the water to tear the animal apart. They leave a crime scene, shattered bones, torn tissue, blood in the water. The pythons Dr. Bartoszek found showed none of that. They were intact, whole, swallowed in one piece. Cross off alligator. Second suspect, Florida panther. These big cats are one of the few apex predators in the Everglades with the size to potentially take on a large python. But again, the evidence doesn't fit. Panther kills show distinctive claw marks, puncture wounds, signs of a violent struggle. You don't miss the scene of a panther attack. There was nothing here. No marks, no wounds. The python had simply disappeared. Cross off, panther. The team worked through bears, large raptors, big fish. Nothing fit the profile. Nothing in the known predator hierarchy could produce a result like this. A 50-pound snake consumed whole, without a single external mark, without any sign of trauma. Weeks of dead ends, weeks of crossed-off suspects, and no answers. Finally, Dr. Bartoszek made the call. Cameras. They mounted motion-triggered cameras across the entire study area, multiple angles, multiple locations, and then they waited. The answer was out there somewhere. Eventually, it would walk or slither in front of a lens. The footage that changed everything. Weeks pass. The cameras are running. The team is waiting. And then the footage comes in. Dr. Bartoszek's team gathers around a screen in their lab. They pull up the file. They press play. For a moment, nothing happens. Just dark water, leaf litter, swamp vegetation, the kind of footage you'd fast forward through if you were bored. And then something moves. In the shadows, barely visible against the forest floor, a thick, dark-bodied snake shifts position. Heavy, muscular, perfectly still until this moment. Invisible, like it was never there at all. A juvenile python enters the frame. The dark snake explodes forward. No warning, no hesitation. Just an instant, surgical strike. Jaws latching onto the python before the prey even registers what just happened. And then, the slow part. The part that made every scientist in that room lean closer to the screen. The predator begins to unhinge its jaws, methodically, patiently. Starting at the tail, it begins working the entire python, still twitching, still alive, down its throat, inch by agonizing inch. One snake consuming another snake, almost its own size, with the calm focus of an animal that has done this 1,000 times. Someone in the room whispered something. Nobody asked them to repeat it. The predator on screen was a Florida cottonmouth, a venomous pit viper. Native to these exact wetlands, a snake that most people only know as the dangerous one to avoid near water. Not an alligator, not a panther, not some exotic, undiscovered apex predator. A cottonmouth. The X-ray imaging confirmed every detail. In one fully documented case, the cottonmouth had consumed the python completely tail first, working the entire body into its stomach. The cottonmouth measured between 34 and 42 inches long. The python inside it was nearly the same length. One biologist on the team described watching that footage as seeing evolution fight back in real time. Dr. Bartachek looked at those X-ray images. Python's spine coiled inside a cottonmouth's belly, transmitter still blinking, and felt something shift. 20 years of fieldwork, and nothing had prepared him for this. A native predator, doing quietly and efficiently what hundreds of millions of dollars in government programs had failed to accomplish. And the craziest part of all, this shouldn't have surprised anyone. The answer was there the whole time. We just weren't paying attention to the right animal. Why the cottonmouth is the perfect weapon. Here's what makes the cottonmouth such a uniquely perfect hunter for this job. And once you hear all of this laid out together, you'll wonder why no one connected the dots sooner. Most people think of cottonmouths, also called water moccasins, as simply dangerous snakes near the water, something to back away from slowly. That reputation is accurate, but wildly incomplete. Adult cottonmouths grow between 30 and 48 inches. Rare older individuals reach 6 feet or more. They are heavily built, thick, muscular bodies designed for aquatic environments. Semi-aquatic ambush predators, perfectly at home in the exact same flooded wetlands, cypress swamps, and slow-moving waterways where Burmese pythons love to hide and hunt. Same territory, same water. And the cottonmouth has been here for thousands of years. The heat-sensing organs are what make them truly remarkable hunters. Cottonmouths are pit vipers, named for the heat-sensing pits located between their eyes and nostrils. These organs detect infrared radiation, body heat. A warm-blooded animal moving through the swamp at 2 in the morning is a glowing beacon to a cottonmouth. They don't need to see you in the traditional sense. They sense your heat signature. Even cold-blooded pythons, which absorb heat from basking or from digesting a recent meal, emit just enough infrared warmth to be detected. There is genuinely no hiding from a cottonmouth inside its own habitat. Then there's the venom itself. Hemotoxic, designed by millions of years of evolution to destroy blood cells and tissue from the inside out. In humans, an untreated cottonmouth bite carries a 17% mortality rate. In smaller prey animals, it is almost universally fatal, not from the mechanical damage of the bite, but from the internal collapse that follows, cells breaking down, blood unable to clot, organs beginning to fail. And here is the detail that ties everything together. Cottonmouths have always eaten snakes. Researchers have documented them consuming 27 different snake species, including other cottonmouths. They are ophiophagus, which simply means snake eating is a natural, built-in part of their diet. This isn't new behavior that developed in response to the python invasion. Cottonmouths were eating snakes long before the first python was ever dumped into the Everglades. They just added invasive Burmese pythons to a menu they've been working from their whole lives. Their tactical approach is smart and safe. When targeting large prey that might fight back, they strike fast, inject venom, and immediately release. Then they back off and wait at a safe distance, while the hemotoxin dismantles the prey from inside. Juvenile pythons, still only 18 inches long, still developing their muscular strength, cannot fight back effectively once venom is in their system. The outcome is decided in seconds, even if it takes minutes to play out. 3 documented kills in one study area in just a few months. That is not coincidence. Scientists now believe cottonmouths have actively learned to recognize juvenile pythons as high-value, low-risk prey. Native predators adapting in real time to exploit an invasive species that everyone else had written off as unstoppable. The full ecosystem fights back. The cottonmouth story is extraordinary, but here's what's even more extraordinary. It's not fighting alone. Dr. Bartoszek's tracking data revealed a pattern that nobody had been actively looking for. 5 of the 19 monitored pythons in the study were killed by American alligators. One of those gators was just 9 feet long, not even close to the largest alligators in the Everglades. These ancient animals hadn't surrendered their territory. They'd been pushing back the entire time, one python at a time, without any scientist documenting it. Then came the footage that genuinely stopped the research team cold. June 2021. A wildlife camera in the study area captures something that has never, not once, been recorded in scientific literature anywhere on Earth. A bobcat, a native predator whose population had been devastated, wiped out nearly entirely in some areas, by the very invasion it was now fighting back against. This cat didn't retreat. It didn't avoid the danger. It walked directly up to an active python nest. The mother python was there, coiled, protective, dangerous, and the bobcat attacked anyway, slashing with its claws, feinting, driving the python back with pure aggressive energy, not running, not retreating, fighting. And while the python was distracted and defensive, the bobcat began stealing eggs from the clutch, methodically, one by one. The researchers watched that footage in stunned silence. Nobody had ever seen a native mammal raiding a python nest before, not in published research, not in years of field study, never. This cat had learned something. It had figured out that the eggs were vulnerable, that the mother could be distracted, and that this was a fight it could win on its own terms. The resistance ran even deeper than that. Recovered transmitters found near flooded areas with open perching spots overhead told a separate story. Raptors, owls and hawks, operating in the pre-dawn darkness and early morning light, were snatching juvenile pythons from exposed positions before the young snakes could grow into the 200-pound monsters that would eventually swallow deer whole, stopping them before they became unstoppable. Black bears were documented attacking pythons. Florida panthers, the same species whose population the pythons had helped destroy, were recorded hunting them. An entire coalition of native species. Every level of the food chain, every habitat, every time of day and night, each one independently arriving at the same conclusion. These invaders can be fought. This territory can be defended. The brutal, honest truth. Now, here's the part where I have to be completely honest with you, because everything we just talked about, the cottonmouth discoveries, the bobcat raids, the alligator kills, the raptors hunting at dawn, all of it is genuinely remarkable. All of it is real. All of it represents something scientists didn't expect to find. But it might not be enough. A single female Burmese python lays between 12 and 36 eggs per clutch, sometimes more. The eggs hatch in 60 days. The young snakes are independent immediately. They mature within a few years. They live for decades. The reproductive math is relentless, and it does not care about inspiring wildlife footage. Florida's official python removal program has pulled more than 5,000 pythons from the wild since it began. The 2024 Python Challenge, a state-organized hunting event, eliminated nearly 200 snakes in a single weekend. That sounds like progress. Dr. Mazzotti says it barely scratches the surface. And here's why. Pythons are, arguably, the most effective hiding animals on the planet. They don't just hide, they disappear. They submerge. They fold themselves into spaces that seem physically impossible. Experienced trackers with years of field training can walk within 3 feet of a coiled, motionless python and never see it, never suspect it. The snake watches them walk past. Large sections of the Everglades remain completely inaccessible to human hunters on foot, miles of flooded terrain where no removal team can operate. In those areas, right now, pythons are doing exactly what they've always done. Every cottonmouth that hunts a juvenile python matters. Every bobcat that raids a nest matters. Every alligator kill, every raptor snatch, every human hunter. Each one of them is buying time. The question is, time for what? Time for the ecosystem to fully adapt? Time for new interventions? Time for something no one has thought of yet? What gives researchers the most cautious hope isn't any single predator. It's the pattern. The cottonmouth didn't wait for a government program. The bobcat didn't ask for permission. The alligators kept doing what alligators do. Nature began adapting on its own terms, quietly, violently, without any press release. That adaptation might be the best chance the Everglades has. But whether it's happening fast enough? Nobody knows yet. And that uncertainty, that open, unresolved question sitting in the middle of one of America's most extraordinary wild places, is why scientists like Dr. Bartoszek keep wading through black water in the dark. Somewhere in the Everglades tonight, a cottonmouth is digesting a python whole. It's transmitting